So on this test, that last question was a 10-point bonus. That's where the 110 points came from. Like I said, a lot of people did very well on that and got the 10 points. Some people may have only gotten 5 points. But the majority of people that did miss it for the same reason, which was getting the angle in the wrong place. But there were some people that missed it because they put a different number in the wrong place. So I just want to make sure that you know why you are getting things wrong. If you are getting them wrong, maybe you're not. But then at the same time, sometimes you get things right because you got lucky, because you just guessed at one because you couldn't remember, and then that's what happened, and it was right. Either way, we just need to make sure that we are on the right track moving forward. Because when we started angles of elevation and depression, I told you that there will be people that get the angle of depression wrong every single time, and don't be those people, but there are a lot of you that are those people. Okay, so we need to bring you back to the other side. So this says an airplane is flying at a height of 2 miles above the runway. The distance along the ground from the airplane to the runway is 5 miles. What is the angle of depression from the airplane to the runway? One reason I think maybe some people at least are getting things in the wrong place is because you just draw a triangle and then you try and label stuff on it. That's not always the best approach. I mean, in the end, you know you're going to have a right triangle, but at the same time, you need to put the pieces together so things make sense. So here's your airplane, right? It says it's flying at a height of 2 miles, okay, above the runway. The distance along the ground from the airplane to the runway is 5 miles. So this here is my 5 miles. Now, how do I know that that's 5 miles and not my hypotenuse? It says along, yes. Distance along the ground from the airplane to the runway. The distance from the airplane to the runway would be the hypotenuse. And that is an important measurement to know to make sure you have fuel to get how far you need to go. But then the ground distance is also an important one, just depending on what you need it for. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
It's 5 miles away from the runway. I got really confused, but then I was like,
Well, it's still above the runway and not on the runway. Does that make sense? It's still above it, and it's not direct. It doesn't necessarily just say directly above it. It's probably kind of where your mind goes, which is understandable. I mean, sometimes just because those words aren't there, it's what we're thinking. Above it, we're thinking directly above it, but that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, a little tricky. All right, so then it says, what is the angle of depression from the airplane to the runway? Okay, so to get an angle of depression, we have to look straight ahead. Then we look down. This is our angle of depression. So I have said 5 million billion times, an angle of depression or an angle of elevation has to have one of the two sides be a horizontal line. So this angle right here will never, ever, ever be an angle of depression or elevation because neither one of these is a horizontal line. Does that make sense to you? Like, it still might be an important angle. If this was the ladder leaning against the wall, I'm not saying we'll never find that angle, but as far as labeling it as an angle of elevation or depression, never going to happen. Okay, and that's usually where the wrong angle goes if you are going to put it in the wrong place. Now, at this point, to solve it, I can complete my triangle this way. And I can use this one right here, because that's where I labeled my angle. This is 2 miles, this is 2 miles. If this is 5 miles, this is 5 miles. So I could use this triangle here, but I don't have to. I can use this one. Is there an angle in this bottom triangle that's the same as x? Yes. This one right here, because they are what type of angle pair? Alternate interior angles. Good. Now, if you want to use this one, you can find x, that's fine. Okay, whether you use this triangle or this triangle, you're going to get the same answer because they're congruent and it all works together that way. But if this is the only one you label, I did not give you full credit because this is not an angle of depression. The angle of depression that you label for the picture is this. If you choose to move it here and use it to find it, that's fine, I don't care. But you have to understand the concept of the angle of depression. Does that make sense to you? All right, we all good on the picture now? So then to solve for x, am I using sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent, okay, because it's opposite over adjacent. So once I do the tangent inverse, then the angle measure would be 21.801, okay? So 21.801 degrees would be your answer. Okay? We all good? So if you didn't get the 10 points there, whatever mistake you made, make sure you do not continue to make the same mistake over and over and over again. Yes, ma'am? Angle of elevation from what to what? Because if I said Angle of elevation from the airport to the plane. Okay, so here, or the runway. We'll just do that. Let's use the same one. So the angle of elevation. If this is the this is the runway, right down here somewhere. Okay. So the angle of elevation from the runway to the plane, you have to have a horizontal, which can be the ground. Just because I say you have to look forward, it's not always eyes, right? The ground can be your horizontal. So here's my horizontal line. Angle of elevation from the runway to the plane is the same as the angle of depression from the plane to the runway. So like those first ones we did on our examples, there was a man looking down at a bug, I think. So the angle of depression that the man looked down at the bug, and the bug looked, and the angle of elevation that the bug looked up at the man was the same, because their vision, I don't know, like if you had laser vision, their little eye rays would meet, okay, because they're looking down the same path. Does that make sense to you? So angle of elevation, it's usually angle of elevation is a whole lot easier because it's the one you would just naturally draw if you didn't overthink it. Mm-hmm. Yes, but it is possible. So she said I start at the bottom for the angle of elevation and the top for angle of depression. But it depends. If I was looking at like office building to office building or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily start at the bottom at all, because it may be something where angle of elevation from this point to this point, then this would be my horizontal, and then that would be my angle up there.
And then in between there would be the angle of elevation.
Right, yeah, so this would be my angle of elevation. And then so like if there's a person here and they're looking up at an angle of elevation. The person that's here looking down, they look straight ahead, then they look down. Those two angles are the same because their eyes are meeting and they're getting that same ray there. Does that make sense? Okay, that's a good question. Anything else? So yes, but basically angle of elevation always goes up, hence the word elevation. Depression always down, but it has to start with the horizontal. That's the key that some of you are missing. Okay, we good? Anything else on that? Okay, good deal.